Good afternoon. Thank you, colleagues, for staying till the end of the forum. There are many questions that relate to production industries in Russia, where we're going, who is guilty, and what should we do about it. One of the most serious problems that we have today in the restaurant business is the new economic environment that we have now. In my understanding, it is similar to end of 80s, early 90s. The challenges that we have today, but they're absolutely different. It just seems that that they're not alike that it was possible to make in 90s, when all your merits were that you can get something from somewhere and make something out of what you have and quickly open a restaurant. After 8 months, you can buy it. So question now, how to make restaurants so you can buy it and exist in perfect circumstances. Today we have quite big number of speakers. I can say that we have problem with the foods that we have after import substitution. Some markets are dependent on restaurant business, and today entrepreneurs simply do restaurant opening without participation in programs organized by the travel companies and anything related. I'd like to give the floor to Denis Yukhnov. He will make a short presentation and then we will move further. Hospitality of the restaurant business for the 24 years period. Something that Oleg Yuryevich told us about unclear time. It's not just some crisis, I'd like to say right away. This is smooth transition and quick transition from the post-industrial century to the digital century. That's why we're experiencing fever and we have so much turbulence on the market. In general, in the near time, we'll have several stages of market development. Now we had first stage, we had problems, but it's not clear how to solve them. We were not looking for the solutions. Now we go through the second stage. It's clear problems. We're looking for the resolutions, make decisions. The non-return point is already seen. I'll stop at the second stage. So this is the situation when a huge number of people who come to a company and people say that we have problem with realization. Please help us to promote. It's not about promotion. You have to fully rearrange your business. What happened? Relax, colleagues, everything is fine. Is the digitalization that it may happen that the electricity is disconnected since summer of 17th and the summer of the 19th. We have different story. It's acceleration of our problems creation when we have to transition from bankruptcy, threat, rearrangement of business, and the cutbacks. In the 19th till 22nd, we either rearrange ourselves or leave the market. In order to strategically think ahead, we have clearly understand where we are now. In our times, we have pluses and minuses. The largest, I'll start from the negative points. The most serious since 90s demographic gap We cannot hire so much personnel that we need. Full absence of modernization, automatization, and robotization. That's a very important point. Majority of restaurant owners know when they have human factor, restaurants will leave. The essence of the digital period is that if you don't automate and don't increase robotization, the digital world will stop noticing you and will go on. Practical absence of the labor performance today. Restaurants, in comparison to retail, work at the 30% out of capacity. I work with retail and restaurants and other segments of the market. I say that the lesser efficiency is restaurants. Very low amount of knowledge and competency, absence of the adequate expertise of the market. The consulting is destroyed. When the market was growing, there was negative orientation our way, and quality consulting companies remain. You can have just the fingers of your palm, and situation for the market is bad. And another point is decrease of investors to the industry. Even in summer, there was a wave of interest of investors, and there was huge number of money coming to the food retail and restaurants. In January and in December, situation turned around because there's mass non-return of the payments. It scared investors away. They don't want to invest into the industry of hospitality, and the same is true for food retail. Again, positive points. There's one serious point. All this time, restaurants were in the pleasure zone. People went there in order to gain emotions. At given time, restaurants become necessity. People will go to restaurants when they need it. There's nothing else. It's a very positive moment because the situation can be forecasted and you can make systemic business that we didn't have before. Growth of the foreign incoming tourism in St. Petersburg, Kaliningrad, and Vladivostok. In those cities, number of tourists is extremely high. The number of tourists in St. Petersburg compared to the number of the tourists in Barcelona. I mean the annual numbers. If Barcelona is fully tourist city, then St. Petersburg is the same. In the center of the city, according to my own analytics I published many times, one resident in St. Petersburg has 12 foreign tourists per year. This is a very serious situation for development in those cities. Kaliningrad because it's quite close to Europe, and Vladivostok because it's close to China, Japan, and Korea. Merger with the food retail because restaurant owners understand that why not to do simple things. All the story about food, the food can be sold, prepared, and sold. Increase of the growth of the functional meals. People receive food not for pleasure, but in order to replenish the need. Sporting meals, and so powder foods, some phases gone back already there. Now we have, because of all this, we have opportunity to control the audience and through the communication instruments. Based on my experience talking to many restaurant owners, before the meeting I told the people about 95% of people don't understand what's marketing and communication, but since the business is going from the model of pleasure to necessity, we can start making systemic business and impact audience the way we need. This is huge plus. Decrease of the competition because weak players leave the market. It is clear. Those who don't understand, those who think that this is crisis will leave in the coming year. Those who understand, who know what's going on, they will remain. They have huge plus because half market players can leave and the market will be half empty. What and where, based on all of this, should be where to send our steps. The automation, robotization. Just today I read the article about some startup that made practical experiment in cooking the robot without human participation. The robot in America, it's paid information on the Facebook. If we don't do it, then the market will bypass us and go further, knowing what food retail is doing, what the global companies do. They will bypass us and move further their own way, and we will not do anything. Transition from the catering business to global food retail. We have to forget that we're restaurant owners. We sell food. If we don't, and if we don't make union with retail or don't substitute it or believe they're enemies, we'll lose. If we merge with food retail, if we try to work food retail, if we work together, then we'll win. There's no other way around. Organization of the food classes in the tourist cities, such as St. Petersburg. In Moscow, there's huge number of the so-called gastronomy markets and the food courts. All these themes will exist in St. Petersburg, Kaliningrad, and Vostok. In Moscow, I will not mention. It's hardly possible. In those cities, it's quite promising. Merger and synergy, unity of the market participants for the new project's realization. This is mandatory. It's the motto of the post-industrial period. Divide and rule. What is the motto of the digital epoch? Unite and enjoy. The essence is this. We have to merge. There are many startups, even serious restaurant owners who participate with 100 people, invest money, no one is leader, and everyone does the business. Whether we work together, otherwise we're not there anymore. Organization of the projects where meals is part of the service link. Like earlier, retail shopping malls, what Mega does, we had several years ago the project with in the different city. Earlier, when you come to food court of the shopping mall, there's a food court where people eat. They come upstairs. Now you have to do it, so the meals are everywhere in all store floors of the retail shopping malls. So the meal is not enjoyment, meal is necessity. And alternative forms of catering, such as delivery and anything else. Like, for instance, I will not say who did it, but they actively test large food retail network, one of the most promising that goes ahead, made non-contact delivery. If we go the same way and if we don't do what they do, we'll not be there anymore. And this is all I wanted to tell you. Denise, thank you. As usual, I asked Denise to specify the most acute questions. Now we'll make presentations. We can not dwell on the subjects, and then you have Q&A. The questions about digital economy. The next speaker, Sergey Mironov. Welcome. Good afternoon. If we talk about life, then perhaps everyone saw what's happening on the Facebook. Have interesting situation. Can I tell? Interesting situation. Police came. They extorted bribe, and for the first time, very loudly, it was declared. I made declaration on internet. Was 12,000 reposts, quite global. Many colleagues, restaurant owners, wrote to me, they called me, you do wrong thing, you will be destroyed. There was a statement of the General Prosecutor's Office and Minister of Internal Affairs. The internal security is investigating the case, and the investigators talk to me and they'll say that things will be fine, and this time the bribers will be punished. What I'm saying, that in my view, despite of global skepticism, the time is changing. The publicity that we had due to internet, when in 2 hours you can spread information to tens of thousands of people, helps us a lot. Further, I'd like to, in the process of reporting, I'd like to talk about the tenants and the landlords. We talk about the dark side of the restaurant business. We have tendency, we go ahead, but at the same time we stumble against things that were in early 90s. We had it this way. In 90s, the criminal organizations tried to control us. Now, quite serious inspecting organization and law enforcement organizations try to control us. This is a serious hindrance, so we can talk about digitalization. At the same time, we can have such stumbling situation. And of course, there's situations such as in what environment we are. And one of the questions today, cost control, cost management, that is what Sergey is going to tell us about the conflict that he put on the public discussion arena. The restaurant owners for the last 25 years tried to solve in the secrecy. We cannot operate the issues related to rent of this space. Unfortunately, it takes too much time. We cannot operate the issues related to payment of utilities. We have big problem with the human resources, of which we talk much, which Dennis was talking about low performance and low productivity. One of the serious questions is the question of having practically 99% of all enterprises of catering are rental. What happened to rent? Igor, if you don't mind, I'll make short information about the market, so we'll not talk about negative points. And 2 words about what we call crisis. For us, for the restaurant owners, I'm acting restaurant owner. This crisis is slightly unusual. Earlier crises were absolutely clear. There was decline, you had to hold on for a little while, and then you have rebounds back up. So we have losses, we fixed, we stopped, and then we came back. Now situation for the majority of the restaurant owners is inclining strip, and unfortunately there is no escape way, and many people go according to the principle of optimization, and they need to optimize somehow to cut the costs.
But I cannot agree with these policies. Either you can work or you don't know how to work. If you don't know how to work, you should leave the market. So all this optimization, trying to use some austerity measures is not right. I'm moving ahead. I'm going forward as I try to develop myself. So right now I've opened another restaurant, 1,700 square meters, which is the biggest in Moscow, opened since the beginning of the crisis. And in fact, everything is fine. We have to change, to adapt. The country is changing, our clientele also changing, so we have to use and to change our methods of work with the clients. So when I come to the Russian market, I'm very happy. So for me, these sanctions are just a nice thing, because for the first time I ever managed to get supplies, the Russian fish from the north. So everything is fine. It's just perfect. I don't see any problems. Just a few words about the attrition of clients. So when it started and the guests, the clients started to leave for other segments, more democratic, more budget oriented establishments. So everyone thought that the fast food is a kind of the final destination which will not be abandoned by clientele. And everybody started to invest in fast food. But as a result, and towards the end of 2015, we saw the overflow, the overinvestment in fast food. And precisely, I can tell you that it's precisely the food courts and the fast food joints that suffered most in 2017. I think that the restaurants in the medium segment are quite viable. They can develop very well. So I'm going to open another 5 or 6 restaurants in the medium segment, and I don't see any problems. I'm going to open in all 19 restaurants in Moscow, 30, more than 30 in Russia, and we'll go ahead. So that's my view. So what you just mentioned is quite agrees with what Denise has just said. Unfortunately, the medium level of restaurants is quite low. We have superstars who are known to all over the world, or the medium segment. The leader of the medium segment told us that precisely this kind of segment allows our younger generation to go ahead. Okay, if you can talk briefly on that, that will be fine. So I'm not going to talk about my conflict with Efimol. Somebody probably read it on Facebook. But the situation is quite simple. The shopping center tried to kick me out of my venue from my premises when in fact they raided and they've occupied 5 restaurants. Efim is the second company in the world in diamond production after De Beers, as you understand. So it's quite a powerful company, but we managed to somehow retain some of our restaurants. But what are the relations between the leaseholder and the tenant? So when the tenants and the landlord clash, the state prefers to get away from this conflict, claiming that it's just an economic dispute, and they have to apply to go to court. But they are not equal opponents, not equal adversaries. It's just like you put a young boy against a professional boxer on the ring. So if you don't do anything about that, the restaurant will be shut, and in 2 months probably will be reopened in 2 months. But in such case, the restaurant won't be needed by anyone because the losses will be enormous, even after the successful court case. So the small businesses cannot afford to go to court, and even when they try to find a good lawyer, so the good lawyer can be bought by more powerful rivals in court. So I believe that we need to have a kind of state regulation here. We need a regulator. You should not consider all legal entities on the same level. The state must must design some kind of mechanism, creating a structure that will interfere in that. Unless they do that, the small and medium businesses will always be taken over by the big business. So there are situations where they can't do anything about this. In Europe, it's probably trade unions that can advocate, that can defend such businessmen. We do not have such resources. Alexander Ivanovich, when we were sitting at different sessions in the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, and if you remember, we discussed that we need a law on rental on the lease of premises, because it's for the landlord, for them it doesn't matter what he's going to let out. He's always trying to get the best margin from that. In the West, sometimes it's vice versa. As a landowner, you sometimes find yourself in worse conditions than the tenant. But I think we need to raise this issue anyway, because there is such a problem anyway. we do face a problem of accommodating these kind of establishments on the ground floor because they use the loans, they borrowed resources in a buy currency basket. So, but if there is a radical drop in exchange rate, you want to be able to do anything about that because you, if you do this all in rubles. But basically, all these lease contracts are in hard currency, and it is the leaseholder, the tenant, who usually suffers from that. So Mr. Gelibterman was supposed to say, but I'll give the floor to Ivan Merkulov, because that's a question of input substitution and products. And after that, we will go over to the new format so as to, we could discuss that, so that the restaurateur could work not only with retail, but we need to talk about this because industrialization of food catering is quite an acute issue today. So it's quite a serious phase that we are entering right now. Please go ahead. Good afternoon. I just wanted to talk not only about products, but about the trends a little bit. Last year, we celebrated the 20th anniversary, so we do feel what's going on this market. So, but I would like to tell you exactly about 20% of clientele that come to us are new people. So we have 20% of newcomers. So we understand that the hospitality industry continues and remains to be quite interesting to us from the viewpoint of investors, and within this framework, we do see quite some interesting new areas. For example, talking about the chefs, we see quite clearly that there is a new generation of young people who want to assert themselves in this new business, but in the meantime, it's not a European format. It's not a family catering. It's when you have a chef who wants to make good money, that the salary that cannot be afforded by even very good food chains. But most importantly, that the number of chefs who want to assert themselves, who want to fulfill their dreams in this area, has been growing exponentially over the last 2 years. It's more than 3,000 people in our association, for example. If you have noticed, today this is a bifurcation point somehow, you know. So if they receive support, not just regulate their activities, but if they are supported by the state and by the people, that will give us a real boost, a real push towards better development. I see that we have mostly students today in this room, so I think just today, just as yesterday, today is the best time from the viewpoint of entrepreneurship. You shouldn't be scared of that. You can go bravely and plunge yourself into this business, but analyzing the success story, we see that it's not so difficult. You shouldn't be scared. It's a powerful trend, and you should follow it along. Number two, as for the foodstuffs and the sanctions and everything that we've seen over the last years, we see that the hospitality industry is gradually going over to the Russian substitutes, to the Russian supplies. But of course, regions, across different regions, we've heard about Yakutia's meat and dairy products. It still exists. For example, talking about Magadan shrimps, we heard about that, but that doesn't mean that people are ready to supply it here and to have enormous sales of this product in the central regions. irrespective of the costs. So in fact, the market is still in the stage of active formation, active development. So we do see this process, and we are happy to participate in that. Even the Ministry of Agriculture of the Russian Federation has started to be actively involved and displaying much interest in the origin of certain goods. The first and the second trend overlap. So the startups and the chefs we are talking about right here, they are trying to develop our products because we are talking about cost and efficiency, first of all. So I've just mentioned two trends, but I'll talk about other ones. I thought I would talk about them at the end. Please get ready with your questions so we could get the answers and some feedback and to discuss the issues that you're concerned about. Now, in a recent time, we've seen some stories about certain restaurants that can exist by itself in a certain place without even thinking about what they're going to do next, whether to enter a chain or to continue to work as a single establishment. Also, there's a trend related to gastronomy, tourism. So I'll give the floor to Roman first, and then Mr. Sulekov, and then we'll talk with Mr. Zaitsev about a most painful subject, perhaps, regarding personnel and labor productivity. So we would like Sergey to share his expertise with us, as they already have a corporate university in this area. Good afternoon. We're gradually moving towards the evening. Today, we're speaking about the potential for gastronomy, gastrotourism in Russia. Well, of course, 5 or 10 minutes are not enough to talk about this, so let me point out just more general points, and then we'll try to discuss this in Q&A session. First of all, let me introduce to you the gastrotourism from the economic viewpoint. There's a World Tourist Organization under the UN, a special purpose UN agency dealing with tourism. So they're doing quite a lot of things, including statistics. So according to the statistics, in 2017, 1.32 billion tourists across the world were involved in this sort of tourism. So 2017 was the 8th year in a row of steady growth in tourism in the world after the crisis of 2009. So the overall tourism is growing. In 2018, we're expecting another 4 or 5% growth, and 2030, so you can see the figure here, we are expecting 1.8 billion tourists. Two more figures. The overall revenues from foreign tourists, accommodation, food, and entertainment reached 1.3 trillion US dollars. According to WTO, this sector generates roughly about $4.8 billion per day. Now let's talk about Russia. Due to certain objective and subjective reasons, so tourism is now viewed as an industry, as a real sector of the economy. About 19.5 million tourists entered Russia in 2017, so which allowed Russia to become one of the world leaders in this area. But you should understand, as UK Prime Minister was saying, there are 3 types of lies in the world: lies, bad lies, and statistics. So, but our statistics is quite accurate and very expedient. So we can treat these figures in a different way, in different manners. But since they declared these figures, they could probably be even more than that. The Russian market is estimated with totaling 4.8 billion US dollars. So the leaders here, the Moscow, St. Petersburg, Sochi, Kazan, Kaliningrad, further on Nizhny Novgorod, Yaroslavl, Kislovodsk, and other cities. So what is the meaning, what's the importance of gastrotourism? So as we understand that the competition is growing between different regions, and here where we see the biggest role played by the unique cultural heritage, including local cuisine, regional products, and the new opportunities offered by gastrotourism. So in 2018, we will hold the Global Gastrotourism Forum. So prior to that, we held this twice in San Sebastian in Spain, which is the Mecca of the gastro world, and this year it will take place in Thailand. So now regarding the figures, 30% of all budgets are spent on food. Every third tourist believes that the national cuisine is a serious motivation to travel to this country. Also, quite many, 84%, explore the possibility of visiting the country relying on its national cuisine. 55.7% while studying the impact of national cuisine on the culture of the country have changed their opinion of the country after they've tried the national cuisine products. We also stand a good chance, considering that we are going to host the World Cup this year. What tourism can be considered a gastro tourism? So here you can read a list of types of tourism which can be referred to as gastro-tourism. But I would like to say that in more than dozens of countries of the world, they already developed the concept of gastro-diplomacy, as they facilitate it and promote it in the relevant countries, and especially in the developed, among the developed nations. The gastro-tourism is virtually the kind of industry that is very fast developing. Carry on. Gastrotourism in Russia as a kind of a phenomenon which is now developed by the state. It just happened to be for the first time in Russia when the first forum took place in 2014. And it appeared that very many people are very much interested in this theme. Since that time, we started organizing these forums. So in 2015 in Brau du Sor on wine tourism, 2016 Yaroslavl, 2017 two forums, one of them in Astrakhan, devoted to gastrotourism of the Silk Route countries, and Kaliningrad, which was devoted to food.
We plan to have two forums this year. At least one of them will be held in Stavropol, a second in Ulan-Ude. Next. The theme will be explored in 8 hours, so we'll do it in half a minute. The gastronomic tourism is impossible without regional foods, period. Everyone must remember it, recognize it, and understand. On the left side, I showed several products from different countries. The bread, what do you think is protected in terms of the origin? Where does it come from? It's from Latvia. It's not Rижский. And the sausages, not so good looking sausages, it's from Slovenia. European Union elaborated system of production of the products with protected patent. On the right side, I showed the Russian products that in theory are trying to be in mainstream. Let's look further. On the top, the system that is in European Union. It's clear that in every European country they have different names, but if you talk about the highest quality of products, then it's PDO, protected designation of origin. Next, PGI. It's the name of the geographic indication. And TCG is the guaranteed traditional typical national product. In our country we have RANEPA. I will not talk much about it. I will not dwell on this topic, but I'd like to say that RANEPA is not panacea, is not enough to make our food competitive inside of our country, especially considering sanctions. If they disappear, and even if we have ambitions to come with this product to the international markets, and RANEPA is not enough. Next. Gastronomic tourism for the Russian regions. What can it give to us? First of all, development of regional economies. It has to be understood. Infrastructure, creation of the jobs, including, that is also important, the jobs that don't require high qualification level, is keeping the local traditions and customs for many regions. In my understanding, gastronomical tourism is, in essence, the only salvation in economical sense. We have regions that actively work on development of gastronomic tourism. I will not mention them in importance order, but in alphabetic order. Altaysky, Vladimirsky, Kaliningradsky, Krasnodarsky, Moscow, St. Petersburg, Tatarstan, Tverskaya province, Yaroslavl province, and number others. If we speak of the clear interest towards development of gastronomic tourism, then there will be about 20 subjects of the Federation who specify their interest. In the provinces, the interest, there is federal projects that enable, such as Gastronomic Map of Russia project that Russian provinces try to awaken. On the slides that are shown here, these are live photographs from the provinces that had conducted serious events and work in gastronomic tourism. Next. Spanish experience. 2 words. Spain was visited by 7.8 million foreign tourists. Only GP category is 40. But I'm not talking about international tourism. I'm talking about domestic tourism of Spanish inside Spain. So they conduct special ratings, and the numbers from these ratings are extremely curious, because I'll emphasize again, it's not for the foreign tourists, it's for their own tourists. Last year, the leaders were such autonomies such as Andalusia, Galicia, and Basque Country. I don't have to explain to you, especially to those who know about this, how well gastronomically they developed. Not by accident, they are leaders in terms of the incoming tourists. Next. There is a project headed by Memo Center and Association of Restaurant Owners and Hotel Owners, who try to develop so that they can promote Russian provinces in gastronomical sense abroad. It's Russian gastronomical weeks. The key objective is to attract foreign tourists with the help of the instruments of gastronomic tourism, and also assistance to export of the Russian foods and beverages. The first week took place in Madrid in the 15th year. 16th year it was in Madrid and Barcelona. In the 17th year it was in Nicosia and Limassol. Things worked out fine. This week's collected positive references from whoever Even the state started to think maybe they should give some money to organizers because it was private initiative. The state didn't help at all. At all didn't help. That's why this year we plan to have Russian Gastronomic Week in Greece at the end of May. In end of November it will take place in Japan. Ambitions are big. Russian provinces, I see people from Russian provinces that participated in these weeks. I think it's quite curious instrument which can be utilized, and the road is open for everyone. And this is our reality as the snack. I don't know, I wanted good watermelon, so the slide was created yesterday. Till the time when we, with our small resources and capacity, united, will have several capitals of watermelons in Russia. We'll have several festivals. We'll have the memorials to the watermelon, but we'll not have industry related to Russian watermelons. In my view, such products are not only watermelons. We have to unite, just like my colleague said. We need to create the bear's skin and then divide the bear's skin amongst us. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Leonid Vladimirovich. It's very interesting experience, and our colleagues in Limassol and the restaurant and owners and hotel owners, majority of those went to Russia and they were surprised by the regional cuisines shown by us. Look, this is one of the ways that give opportunity today so that we can develop restaurant business, including such story, working concretely with the tourist companies. We have already companies that handle gastronomic tourism. At first they started to move people who went abroad. Now they have people who today go around the country and try sample what local restaurant owners do. I'd like to ask Andrei Suliko and let him tell us what are the opportunities for the digitalization. Good afternoon. My name is Andrei Sulikov. Our Prial company would like to look at the future of the restaurant business and gastronomic tourism. We have strong flux in media. So we are the people who promote this topic with the technology that was stated many times before. We don't really like the term digital. The merger is not really nice term for us. Short presentation. How do we see from the media side, how do we see the problem today that exists in the restaurant business and gastronomic tourism in particular? In order to promote some restaurant or some road, we have to ask 20, 30, 100 different resources. Every one resource has different technical requirements. We have high cost of promotion, and we have to make contract with everyone separately and with every particular restaurant or each particular company that works on gastronomic tourism. We have to hire a person who will provide communication with this resource. We're now in the zone of vulnerability because we had bloggers, we have socially active people. Sergey gave excellent case example about power of social networks. On reputation management, it was the shield, and for some is the offense weapon. And of course, those media trends that pop up on the wave of which you can promote any restaurant, a restaurant or tourist route, it takes separate qualification, separate expertise, and these problems it's difficult to solve on your own. It's good for large businesses, and there are not so many large businesses in our country. So we have initiative to create unified resource that welcomes all the instruments that are operating on the market. Of course, social networks, sites, mobile applications. Let's come to concrete world. We develop the guidebooks, and for the second year, our partner is the Mir TV company. We have contract with TV company that in several months we launch series of TV shows about gastronomical tourism and about restaurant businesses. In the near time, we will prepare a package of proposals for those who are interested to participate in the story, so that you can be filmed, you can be co-authors of these films. Or if you want to get to the media pool, we measure audience with hundreds of millions of people. It will be ready. We have partner, one of the oldest projects with 120,000 pieces of information and gastronomical map of Russia. And this is living map. It's called Russia. You can come to art.ru. There's a number of people in this room, such as Leklik. Alexey, please stand up. So maybe in the lobby you want to talk to this person. Anastasia and Irina, the colleagues of the last year, attracted about 500,000 booking of the tables in the restaurants. There's a loyalty program. This project was born from the marketing project of Alipay for servicing Chinese tourists with the help of the different chatways and different things the Chinese are used to. This is specifically Chinese attraction. There's a rest expert, and the colleagues are here. Please stand up, so wave your hands. If you're interested, come to them and talk to them. The project was born in Germany. Today, about 60,000 restaurants in Russia. We have start of this project in January and February. We have about 2,000 sites and will be placed on the website. There's Federal Mobile Guide for traveling around Russia. We do it since 2014. We have it in English, 250,000 users out of 60 countries with different kinds of information. Object, facility, road. This project is supported at the federal level because it's free on the federal level on the side of business, because reputation is very good. And today, merger of the TV sites and social networks allows us to make special project. Several times we heard about usage of media wave created by the World Soccer Championship. On this site we announce this venue. The tournament of the provinces is championship of soccer among the fans. During big championship we'll have series of matches between 32 teams of the fans on small fields. It will be fan zone type. Simultaneously we'll have tournament, or rather it's being created already, and there's regulation, and you can read about it, how each region can participate. It will take place in city of Vladimir. In the time specified on the screen, it will be Festival of Festivals, along with the 85 teams from different provinces who will play for the right to participate in the World Championship of the fans. So we'll have this event. Every region has the right to make selection tournament, and they already declared their interest in the Astrakhan province, and it seems that we have interested people from Yaroslav province. Every region can make selective tournament as part of this tournament, of this festival. It is clear that to a lesser extent is sports, it's more fanatics. This is all not free. There is a prize fund, there's a table, there's regulation, everything has been published and you can use it. How this will reflect on gastronomic tourism, how will reflect on restaurant owners. We'll have media resources, site, social networks, mobile applications. The colleagues who will believe expedient to participate in this project will receive participation and reflection. Besides, there's a number of contracts with Moskovsky Komsomolets newspaper and the Mir TV station. Number of the partners is growing. Information will be distributed among the participants. Like if we talk about social networks, this is the audience. It is clear that the posts about ascension will reach such audience. Very important, not only have the initiators of the project, it's important to engage the users. That's why we have monitoring, we have instrument that allows to detect references. It can be broadcasted for the interest of the tournament and also for the participants who are the partners. For instance, our case in December and January, when with our partner, it's show Kazan with tables with food, so many rubles per ticket, and the negative wave came. No one knew where does it come. Who works with TripAdvisor, it's difficult to clean up negative references. To remove negative references is quite difficult. In 2 months, we discovered the place of negative information. Number of negative messages is coming to 0. We squeeze out negative with positive. So today, every one of us has smartphone or tablet computer. For us is the window to the world. For us is the bullhorn. We receive information, and with this device receive information about ourselves. Today all technologies servicing the trend that people are preemptively consume information through these instruments. Since the third quarter of the last year, as the confirmation, amounts of money spent for internet exceeded number of amount of money spent not by internet. This trend is repetition of the European and American trend. In America, it was 3 years ago. So today, the number of mobile devices becomes integral part of communication. Just like Denis mentioned, we are digitizing. Otherwise, we will die. Success to you and prosperity. Thank you, Andrei. Colleagues, I understand perfectly that Komsomolskaya Pravda that participated in all projects, they are very interested in all these things that take place with the food, with restaurants. But Andrei, I have a question. In the childhood years, on Saturday, we came to the school playground and place 9. Who lost had to run for the portfolio. The restaurant owners, what does happen to them? The fan teams.
Итак, что касается конкретно рестораторов, то прежде всего, если мы говорим про турнир, значит...
As for Restaurateurs, talking about the Grand Championship, a tournament, there are quite a great number of different premises around. Talking about different premises, so I think that's the kind of promotion that we can talk about. The Liquid company ensures connect and ensures table booking using these resources. Those who are engaged in food delivery will be able to ensure the workload for these restaurants and also supplying these particular foodstuffs and cuisine. That's the pride of this region. Also, there are certain things that Leonid mentioned, the gastronomic souvenirs, the ingredients that people want to take with them to cook something for those who wait for them at home. So this is all part of this gastronomic effort for each region, where you can buy gastro souvenirs, try any specialities that will be posted on all information resources, including recipes. Thank you very much. You know, colleagues, we live in not in easy times, and some mathematicians, such as Merkulov, actually made a forecast that everything will lead us to a digital environment. Last year, our exhibition was titled Generation, and this year, the digital subject. Well, of course, we will talk about this here. So we're going ahead, running along with the time. So pretty well set, all set. So we've actually thought about a few questions to discuss here where the market is going to develop, and Denis has rightly noted either we have to change, we have to understand that we must learn from something, or we have to live in a situation like in some regions. Some of them say, well, I've had this barbecue 30 years ago, and so I'm going to cook shashlik the way, or the skewered meat the same way as I did it many years ago. So the problem of training, raising the skills, what exactly has to be taught today at universities, what kind of supplementary education we need. Do we need to deal with the remains of the Soviet education, or we need to move forward? So when you see these problems, and when you talk with your colleagues, even in Moscow, some of them fail to do something. They fail to understand what's going to happen in a year from now. And when you talk to people in the regions, you cannot expect much either. So that's why I would like to ask Roman to talk about this subject. So let's talk about education in our area a little bit. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I understand that the more we are going ahead, the more tired we are. So it's difficult to keep your attention for the speakers right now. But let me tell you, just let me start with quite another subject. Today, the theme of our discussion is the seamy side of the restaurant business in Russia. So as to understand the restaurant business, we always have to see, to understand our place in the world, the place we occupy, because since we, all of us are franchisees and franchisors, we conduct our business in 76 countries. So we always try to measure up our efforts against the situation in a particular country. So it's quite interesting, the fast food, fine dining, travel dining, and so on and so forth. That's how the restaurant business is organized. But in recent years, there's quite an interesting trend. Fast casual as a business segment is beginning to attack, to oust fast food and casual dining. So that's quite an interesting trend, and today in the United States, fast casual is the most fast-growing segment that takes from clientele from not only from casual dining, but from fast food as well. Fast casual market grew 40% last year. These are enormous figures, as if you understand that in the leading European countries, the growth of the restaurant market takes place against the backdrop of smaller indicators. So there is another trend, interesting trend. In September, I visited a European Food Service Summit, which gathers restaurateurs from all over Europe. So the most recent summit in September devoted more than 60% of all time allocated to the delivery service. This is a European trend. 20% of all time was devoted to health food, health diet, and 20% to internet digitalization of our business. This is a very interesting trend. Of course, the restaurant market is growing. Italian cuisine, #1 in the world, but the Asian cuisine begins its onslaught, and as it allows us to get a taste of new products and new cuisine. Well, of course, we've all of us lived through a crisis that created additional difficulties for all of us. And of course, it's casual dining that suffered first and foremost because we saw an attrition of clients from the fast food market. In 2015, our market demonstrated a certain growth. In 2016, casual dining dropped 16%, fast food as well. So there was a general drop in our market. In 2017, we have no statistical data for that year so far, but I think that the casual dining will probably drop by 7 to 10%, while fast food adds up maybe 2%. So that's an interesting understanding of the market. On the other hand, the delivery market, 2016, 16% growth, and there will be even higher growth in 2017. So we see this world trend. We see new trends, new ideas in Russia and elsewhere. But of course, it's not easy, because so far all the instruments for business support are less important than the state regulation. We know how many problems there are everywhere. If you ask what is the list of documents that every restaurant should have in its office, that will probably be about 5 or 6 pages in small font. It's just a list of documents. In reality, the state regulates all that, and the documents that have to be demonstrated to all inspectors. The alcohol sales market, the state is moving ahead, very consistent about that. So we have to probably file a report on every glass of alcohol drunk by someone. So we will have also to declare the livestock products, the products that come from the livestock. I'm not talking about fire inspection, about Russian consumer market supervision. Since we've joined the customs union, we are also forced to implement this program as well, which is quite formidable effort, as you understand, just to have this kind of activities in the restaurant. So one individual restaurateur is hardly capable to comply with all these requirements and regulations. So where we are right now, so I always praise our restaurateurs because despite all these difficulties, we do see a lot of new developments on the market. Well, of course, we are lagging behind in terms of automation, in terms of labor productivity. But I see the key reason here is that in the culture. We need to improve the culture of our activities, to raise the skills of our workers, working with fewer people, but to ensuring that they are better trained and better professionals. So we need to think about this so that every restaurateur at every position could have a state certificate. So that's kind of a requirement that led us to the creation of our own corporate university, and we got a certificate for education. We're not just a university, we received a license from the Ministry of Education. Special thanks to the hospitality department of the RANEPA, since they acted as our partners and rendered enormous assistance to us. But today, any person that enters, comes to our company has to go through this university. He has to go through the introductory course, induction, and then the relevant training course. So it's impossible to get a better salary and to be promoted in the company without the relevant education. In 2017, there were a lot of employees of our company, our franchisees. So the overall number of all those who were enrolled was about 4.5 thousand people, which is it's quite a large amount, as you understand. But we are just at the beginning of this path, since although we are a big restaurant company, we are prepared to share our secrets with the market, and so please come to us, and so you would be able to get all the necessary skills to practice your skills, and we'll be able to use them later on. So these are quite interesting things, and without that there is no future for us. Thank you. Just one more trend that we wanted to discuss. Ivan Vladislavovich, please. I think efficiency. We have rediscovered this word this last year, again, this year, once again, despite the fact that this industry has been with us about 25 years. This is a continuing trend, talking about the changes that are in demand today, and despite all the crisis. So how we can apply this word in a specific catering establishments, restaurants, cafeterias, automation, promotion methods, production process management, operating with our major partners, more than 700 companies. We focus, the companies that take part in these exhibitions focus mainly on the efficient technologies that enable us to reduce costs, to increase productivity, and to promote different processes, management processes. Since we see this growing trend, people are getting much too expensive. And all the catering establishments are trying to reduce the number of personnel that works in their companies. So there is no other way around. So that's a kind of a powerful trend and a story behind that. As for the pressure, I would probably agree with my colleagues. The pressure is growing. I think it's a kind of an imbalance that we're witnessing here. So the state is structured increasingly so as to exert more pressure on businesses, because there's a huge group of people that are supposed to implement this, to perform this function, working with the documents, gathering information. I think that's a really enormous pressure. When a chef with the investors have to start a business, a catering business, and he needs to fill out a ton of papers, so perhaps People should view this as a process and trying to balance out the process. As you understand, that the first vice president of the Restaurateur Association, last year we celebrated the 20th anniversary, and Alexander is well aware that we are present at every function. So the top persons are saying that we need to be more lax about that, but we see that it's even getting worse when we try to do something like that. But as we learn from the world experience, the public organizations are now come out onto the international arena. But so far, well, there are no such problems. They don't care about that. So let me remind you, colleagues, the transformation, talking about the restaurant market, is not 25 years, but rather 35 years. Last year, in May, it was the 35th anniversary since the law on cooperation, cooperative restaurants was adopted. So there were first post-Soviet restaurants, and we survived through all this crisis. And when the state realized that they have to do something about this, allowing the private entrepreneurs to do something after the crisis of 98, 2008. So they all these repeated itself. But as Sergey said, but those crises were similar. But today we are enter in quite a different crisis.
Yes, I wanted to say a couple of words. We sort of walk by and around. I'd like to say directly that if it comes to any practically small restaurant, then usually it can be closed because no single small restaurant is not able to hold this regulatory framework. In order to make restaurant exist full scale, we need to have labor inspected because no one can meet the regulations. I have to have a person who perhaps works for Rospotrebnadzor, whom I take for myself because no chef can do it, no director are not capable to do this. Such people are not there. I'm talking about other entities because physically to meet all the regulations it should be huge restaurant with huge headcount, with huge turnover in order to afford to maintain so many specialists. I can come to any restaurant and find violation. When we talk about pressing, we're subject to the pressing. You can come and press us. What kind of business is this? How can you talk about development of the industry when the norms don't allow to develop? And the norms don't allow to develop, so you can swing, shift, wiggle, and tomorrow they come and legally close you, although you're not a criminal, although you're trying to do it. You physically cannot do it. What's the problem? This is really so, but unfortunately, since I work in January on the 27th, it will be 30 years of the experience in industry. It's a serious time frame. I remember 10 years of the Soviet period when all enterprises belonged to the state. And in principle, I can say that anything we talk today, when I was student of institute, I knew what are requirements to the fire safety, what's food safety. This is something that is perceived today by the leaders as something like a pressure, and you can live without to some degree. Of course, when it belonged to the state in this sense, the same sanitary epidemiological station, they decided on their own. They didn't put pressure on the restaurant. If something happened, then the directors were changed. But the outlet was not closed. The state provided assistance to the enterprises. Now we're on the opposite sides of the barricades, although any enterprise is taxpayer. And the taxpayers pay for the Rospotrebnadzor, Ministry of Emergency. I'm pro that we have so many documents when sometimes if you dig deep, and the lawyers do it, one clause of one document contradicts absolutely another clause of another document. So this is the situation when truly any enterprise today can be simply in 1 second closed down. This is strange because the state says that business should develop, it should come out of the shadow. We should pay taxes because we need to maintain social services, we need to maintain education, army, and the rest. It happens that we have situation like we're running around magic circle, cannot escape anymore. For the last 8 years, we're trying to change sanitation rules, trying to imagine that just like it happens in the West, but we experience very serious resistance on the part of Rospotrebnadzor, and we unfortunately today cannot do it for one simple reason, because if we lift out of the sanitary norms, we're clearly said what can be system of providing sanitary epidemiological security, but we take Codex Alimentarius and the Global World Health Organization. It says that enterprises of catering are dangerous, but entrepreneurs should do anything possible so the event don't happen. And then the situation when the specialists that didn't study well, we have not knowing the laws, employees in Rospotrebnadzor. So he has in this situation to prove that, for instance, entrepreneur made out of these measures is not enough to observe sanitary safety. They don't want to do it. The distance here is not 1 meter 20 centimeters, is 9 centimeters. I say it's the United States. We have 1 meter 20 centimeters. You're closed for 3 months. You're bankrupt. Colleagues, so let's switch to, we have roughly 40 minutes. Let's listen to the questions in the audience and listen to the questions. Please send microphones. And if you ask questions, please introduce yourself and tell us who you want to ask this question. If speakers want to add, please raise your hand and I'll give the floor. Girl, come down. Good afternoon. My name is Gerasimov Mikhail. I'm a student of the 4th year of RANEPA. I have a question. Are there any positive tendencies? You spoke about the problems. So I have a question to Sergey and another Sergey. And does digitization help to have new opportunities to attract customers? Client targeting, does it help for the restaurants? Unquestionably, there are improvements. Everything is developing. And once again, the old formats fall. The restaurants that used to live in the 20th century. Development is going on and it's progressing. Those who understand, those who can adjust and they go forward quite well. I think the tendency is not so bad. Our market slightly reformats. It cleans out from the old format and it moves forward. I can answer like this. A loyalty program that we develop, the honorable guest of our restaurants. In a year of this program, we have 1 million participants. So we developed the program and we have ambitious objectives. So we can send push notification, advertisements. The guests have status such as gold, silver, and platinum. They receive gifts. And communication with them will be more personal. We'll know what does he order for the home delivery, what are his preferences, and we'll hint and offer to him the products. The process is full size, full on underway. They can order table, they can book table, and what they want to eat, so they can order and we can cook ahead of time. We, all of us, live with mobile gadgets. Today in the audience, I saw 3/4 with mobile phones and tablets without releasing them. So we're so used to this, it's our continuation. We all live with the smartphones. It imposes. Everyone wants to make food Instagram so that you can come and take a picture and send to your friends, look what I'm going to eat, without even trying. Of course, this movement ahead, development of technologies, people don't go to a restaurant without reading references. So this is the direction, the vector. This is from the standpoint of the customer. Inside of the restaurant, the waiters had iPod. It doesn't write on paper. He comes to the station, to the kitchen. He didn't leave your table. The dish is being cooked. The manager has gadget where he can see all the sales online from every waiter, bartender, so he can influence the situation. The person sitting in the restaurant can leave the reference and manager receiving reference, so he can come over to discuss the reference. The movement is very dynamic. This is another big topic. Anything happening in the market happens in the market a lot. In my view, there is internal accumulation of potential, and it will splash later. Don't think that everything is negative. On the other hand, just like I said, the market is going down. Know about external conditions. What else is positive? Positive development of the foods market. It goes ahead. We all feel it. We see elements of pride. When a man says, it's a local product, very tasty, great, wow. So we have national pride. So we have last 2 to 3 months consolidation of the business. We have first sprouts, or I'm even afraid to scare away the growth of real growth. And of course there's accumulation of potential despite of seeing sanctions. During last years, people are used to open world, so the new tendencies are coming over, technologies are going ahead, ideas go ahead, and this is a big achievement. Colleagues, Leonid Vladimirovich, I just want to say, we can say that tendencies are bad. They always were problems. This situation is this, state wants to control and we want to work. This is the two sides coin. The state understands that it cannot keep state and catering enterprise, so decided to make them cooperative. When they understand that money from taxes will not come, they'll make up something else in order to simplify the operation of the entrepreneurs. And still, entrepreneurial initiative is high, and I think that the opportunity for opening new restaurants, and there are big opportunities because in terms of quantity, number of restaurants is less in the most developing countries. So the future for you students to become stars in the near time. Colleagues, quickly. About optimism. In particular, trip with Igor around our native country, especially last year, they make us optimistic, because when you see so many burning eyes, so many people who want to develop and they want to make successful startups, I want to tell you, perhaps it's the better optimism that experienced people can experience seeing what's happening on the market. I'll give you a small example. In Astrakhan province, a business made by a fellow who is a theater director, and he's not from Astrakhan. He came to administration and said, give me land, please. They said, why? I want to grow salad and different grasses for the restaurant. They said, listen, there's no market, is divided. It's not going to work for you. They gave him, without any conditions, they gave him some land. He researched markets, he saw what sellers are lacking. So he selected certain items, talking to the cooks. He started to grow. The cook started to buy. The cook said, you have so quality product, so we'll buy. So they throw away old competitors. So the guy became a rich man in a couple of years. He created new service that is called Friends from Astrakhan, that considers all the terms which, as the humanitarian person, the term digitalization makes me not so happy. All this digitalization has a flip side, has side of personification of person. And all business will be digital. It will make every person individual. The colleagues make millions, but they become platinum, silver, gold, in order to single out every person by gifts. That's why those who want to combine personification and the service that at least looks like individual. Why did his guy in Astrakhan did it? He had round the clock on this side a man sitting with the website. It's not just saying that we're in your disposal. He talks. And the client base, all huge client base that he has, was created by communication, simple human communication, with the use of digital technologies. That's why I'm very glad that we have more people paying attention to human, to personality, to needs and demands. That for our country didn't exist for a long time. But the logics of life lead us there. And the man is shifting towards the center. And this is very positive tendency. Thank you, Leonid Vladimirovich. Colleagues, do you have any questions? Hello, dear colleagues. Rodakov Yuri, head of Russian Union of Processors of nuts, mushrooms, and berries. It's nice to hear that the restaurant owners are switching to the domestic product. In terms of the wild growth, there is a huge bracket that can be an element of gastronomic tourism or the instrument of new dishes or even new tendencies in restaurant business. Even more so that with Ivan, we share information for a long time. And I wanted to ask from colleagues, how do you see, what do you need from this industry that is being born so that you can normally cooperate with those producers who really are around Russia? Will it be local? Whether will be in the places where you are now at this point? You see, it reminds, since I'm long time on this market, it reminds the times when in Nostalgia restaurant we saw when the last Soviet cow was butchered, where filet mignon was used. There was nothing else left because it was a cow for milking mostly. I can say that even at that time, there were farmers at that time and there was movement. We always asked, what do you have? They said, what do you need? So it's conversation of blind with death. Imagine that you have any company in the West today says we have so-and-so product. They hire a chef who makes proposal for the market. Otherwise, it's a story. What do you need from us? In conservative, not so educated restaurants and chefs and cooks, they say we have suppliers. Shish kebab is there and the deal is being chopped. Can I say concretely what I feel? Considering the vector that was discussed today regarding digitalization, we have to make a page with product matrix of the foods with the list of your suppliers and distribute it through all the facilities, because today this is the list of the products which we say everyone imagines them very abstractly. We see the cedar nuts, but majority of us have no clear understanding what's the difference between Siberian cedar from Korean cedar. It's a poisonous plant, the cedar. Colleagues, more questions? Please send microphone to the girl in white. Hello, Marina Khokhlova, author of the Russian Sweets project. Question to the restaurant owners. Since I travel a lot, I come to different gastronomical events. Tell me, are you ready to collaborate with the event tourism organizers? If yes, how? I'll give you an example. A week ago, I came back from Belgorod from the festival of Vareniki, and some owners of the restaurants and coffee houses included Vareniki in the menu. Can I answer? We really, small cities in this sense, can be efficient, and it's much easier for them. This year with Leonid, we traveled half country, and we see how it happens. I see many claims to the name Gastronomical Festival because majority of people who participate don't understand what's gastronomy, and they use it because it's fashionable. It's a buzzword. I simply give the floor to Katya Shapovalova. She'll tell us about Katya, but be very brief. An opportunity to collaborate with the restaurant owners. And now, while Katya is waiting for the microphone, Sergey, you can say something. Yes, we opened for that type of thing. We opened for this type of festivals. We will be glad. So offer and we will get involved. Because we have resources, and resources always at our disposal. We're interested in all this. I can add the same. I wanted to give the same answer. Give us concrete proposal, and we're ready to tell that we don't conduct. We can't say we don't conduct it. So the answer is yes, let's try. Moscow doesn't experience problems via gastronomical tourism. Moscow doesn't experience problems. The travel company brings tourists. If there is need for gastronomical product, we can give them a hint. And it's the breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and snacks around the city. Moscow and large tourist cities don't have problem. They have infrastructure. But experience of Vladimir, that is small city, Igor is here, and Katya, what they started to do there at the gastronomical map of Russia, they're trying to make restaurant owners and hoteliers, make them involved and show them that alongside with what already is done, you can wait for the local guests who live in this area. You can wait for people who come from outside. It's additional revenue. Good afternoon. My name is Katerina Shapovalova. I'm coordinator of the Federal Project Gastronomical Map of Russia. Thank you. Briefly, come to the website Russia Travel. It's the project of federal agency.
Started on the 3rd of August last year. In December, there was an official presentation of the project, the National Tourist Portal. An interactive map will be posted. The interactive map, which will include regional products as well, and the regional and the provincial cuisine, dishes and menu. But the problem that we are facing right now, that we still have to do a lot to design graphic characters, because as it turned out, we do not have official graphic characters for for certain groups of products. So therefore, this is the work that has to be carried out by specialists now. Apart from gastro festivals, affairs, I would probably deal with the design of such products, because the tourism, as first of all, is the existing tourist product, since we do not have suppliers of tourism services. It's mostly students who are present in this room. But in fact, designing new format of tourist services, chefs and restaurateurs are doing this as extracurricular activities, because this requires a special work and a special design. You need to design these meals, these menus specifically for tourists, and how they should be delivered, how they should be served. So that's an absolutely separate and a quite complicated process. Specialists are needed for that. A landscape designer. So this group has to deal with the references, because if you take Russia, if you just try to search this on the Google, you will see very low quality content. That's why we are designing this Welcome to Russia specifically for gastro-tourism. It's difficult to find a good picture of a chef with the meal that he has cooked himself. So we believe there must be a person who offers services in the area of gastro-tourism. So we invite you to follow our project, Interactive Gastromap Russia, where you would be able to see all the content that we started in August last year. We launched this project in 10 regions of Russia, including 5 regions where the World Cup, World Football Cup will take place. So you will also see the content that we filmed at the Welcome 2018. Street food. Well, of course, it's a kind of a modeling effort. So that I do hope that fans and guests will be able to taste this during the World Cup tournament. So you cannot find a good picture of a chef with a meal. That's a specific situation, depending on the chef and the owner of the restaurant who invests in this business. So the situation of interaction between them, including the relations between employer and employee, and the level of training of these people, push us towards certain steps. So the chef has to be protected, as we are told, but it's impossible to do this all the time, because right now we live in a situation where automation, robotization is it's not because it's too costly, We also have people who cost quite much, but they can't do anything. They don't know how to do it, certainly. So automation is needed so as to get rid of an incompetent employee, so as to replace him with a robot. Or with a person with higher skills. But we continue to witness the situation, the system of work and organization of work, when in one of the reference books I read, and we saw that the taste of the meals that are served there vary depending on the shift that is working at the moment. So there are too many factors here that affect this. It's like the number of day offs. So these problems are probably inherited from the Soviet Union, and of course they leave a footprint on what's happening here. So the best restaurant turned out to be a burger joint, so that you were referring to. So that's also one of the problems that we referred to you. So the great number of different words and reference books, guides for a certain fee, they will put you, they will give you a certain ranking. So that's a real problem indeed, dear colleagues. When I talked with Pierre Cardin, I asked, why don't you have Michelin? I once told the Michelin that I don't want to participate in it. I'm the best restaurant in the world and I don't care about Michelin stars. But today, people pay less attention to the number of reference books, but they probably take advice from the feedback in the social networks. And of course, you can get a better feedback, but you can also get a negative feedback. It's kind of a seamy sign of digitalization. I'd rather use the word Uberization, because I don't like the word digitalization. Please introduce yourself. Who would you like to ask? A question to everyone. Ministry of Defense, Kristina Plavko. My question is when we are going to see waiters in the restaurants who know their menus. Because I've seen quite many chefs in the restaurant, and then the waiter comes to the table and we ask him, what are the ingredients? And he says, it's a secret, it's a commercial secret. So we do see, we find ourselves in such situations, but let me answer this question, please. Okay. If you make a kind of a search, you would be able to see what is the turnover in the restaurant business, personnel turnover. It's about 20–30% per year. It's the average. It's the average for Moscow is 65%, which is quite a high figure. So what happens in the restaurant business? We see that younger people begin to choose restaurant business not as a kind of intermediate by additional source of income, but they choose it as their career as they start to move to go ahead. So, but when people treat this not as a temporary part-time work just to live by for some time, but when they feel that this is their main occupation, everything will be fine. A good example, I'm trying to do some kind of a super restaurant in my restaurant. A waiter will not be allowed to serve in the room unless he learns by heart the menu. So sometimes it takes 2 months to learn it by heart. And sometimes people just can't learn it. And that's why they have to do that. Otherwise, they won't be allowed to work, to serve the clients. Ask your friends which restaurants they visit. Microphone, please. Well, you know, we held a Russian Gastro Week in one of the 5-star hotels in a very well-known city. One of our chefs ceased to take breakfast. He said, I've never seen such a dirty kitchen. That's a 5-star hotel in a tourist-oriented city. In France, if the Ministry of Defense begins to allow you to travel to France, why don't you see how they serve in France? The level of service in France means that the level of restaurant service has dropped seriously over the last 20 years. Even worse than in Russia. I went to Paris recently. There was a gastro tour, and I was looking for ideas, and I think that the level of service is just awful. It was absolutely dreadful. Barista. We know the word barista. Bartender. So in fact, the barista industry has come into being over the last 5 years. So we can say that dozens upon dozens of young people who work in cafeterias, calling themselves baristas, they are virtually quite qualified. They have their own community, coffee, methods of making coffee making, and so on and so forth. But the next category, barmen, bartenders. So these layer of people, these are the people who consider themselves to be professionals, and they are trying to develop themselves. As soon as we say a chef, we can be sure that this process in this particular environment is just taking shape, because it's much more difficult compared to barista and barman. Just for your information, barman, bartender, barista, it's the same term but in different languages, but there are certain special titles for that. So we have only 10 minutes left. My name is Dmitry, High School of Economics, Law Department. So my question is as follows regarding the trends that we witness in big cities that probably are inherited by the cities populated with millions of people. So do we see any trends that come from the regions, from provinces to Moscow? It's a very good question. We used to witness this phenomenon in the past from Moscow to regions. Now the regions develop independently of Moscow and St. Petersburg. I visit provinces quite often, and I say, you have your own life, and Moscow is just a different country. St. Petersburg is another country. So before my analysis of the St. Petersburg is different from Perm, Novosibirsk from Krasnoyarsk, different people. St. Petersburg and Moscow are different people. So that's why when we say that whether they come over, every city develops independently. Well, I guess the situation is when we first, 25 years ago, for example, when we went to Paris and we introduced ourselves as a restaurateur from Moscow, it's like a person from Burkina Faso coming to Moscow will ask something about this. But it just depends on the place where you go. If you go to Paris without knowing the language, how to deal with these people there, you can just copy whatever you learned there. But some people travel to Japan, Korea, and other countries, and in fact there's a great number of different things that can be seen on the web. You don't have to travel. At one of the forums, a person came up to me and helped me for assistance with his restaurant, because I have a consulting company. But I explained to him I have no time to help other cities. And he just copied everything, including the menu. So that's your project. Now let me add that I'm planning to open up the first restaurant in Volgograd who will be even better than in Moscow. This is a bilateral process. It's coming from Moscow to the regions, and many restaurateurs from provinces are trying to implement their ideas in Moscow. Ekaterina Galkina, Lipetsk. My question is, it doesn't matter who is going to answer that. Well, probably restaurateurs. So we understand about the personnel turnover. so in the restaurant business, and how we can fight this trend that the people do not register officially in this. There are quite many gray salary schemes. Well, the simple answer is to pay above the market margin. That's it. So the second is the kind of internal ideology that we tend to forget certain time and a certain point of time. But I think we need ideas. People should understand where we are moving, what we must do. We have to be proud of our restaurants. It's the feeling that a person is engaged in some important business. And that's when the turnover will be not so great. Well, of course, we have to demonstrate, to show, to hold meetings, to inspire people, not just imposing penalties on them. I'm not repeating what Sergey has just said. I'm siding with this view, but I think the company's culture, the company mission is ever more important today. Internal relations, the careers, and of course, the younger people who come to work there today, they always ask a question whether you pay an officially that salary and what is the social package and so on and so forth. These things are very important. Moscow Business Association is probably one of the oldest people who are bucking the system. But I'm still young in spirit. My spirit is young. I was not preparing myself for this presentation, for this discussion, but I decided that I should not keep silent, especially because I turned around several times, and I do want to address you after all. As you have seen here, we face a great number of problems here. This can be explained easily, because when we switched over to a new economic formation from the Soviet Union that collapsed, all the documents and legislative acts remained the same, and the bureaucracy is the same. So the spirit of the Soviet system is still reigning everywhere. You know, 600 legislative acts and documents that can be found in any restaurant or a canteen. So that's what's probably the kind of a reason for all these problems, you know. And the second question that was asked, don't forget, we are still not in the market. In fact, in reality, the true market, where every market player can find his niche and is fighting for his niche, cherishing his reputation. So far, we have nothing like that. And that's why the personnel turnover. You can see the market leaders, the people who think in the new terms, that they have to win the respect of their people, of personnel, that will help them to remain with your company as long as possible.
And there is substantial share of the market, and the colleagues will confirm it. Those who work differently, for those who are most important to make money now, and it doesn't matter how. And when I look at the audience, I want to address you people. Please think, parts of you will become officials after graduation from the academy. I want to see new generation of public officials. Part will go to the market, and I wanted to make sure that you use other people, certain people as example. The restaurant owners is one of the most creative professions, really. This is where many people come after trying in different roles. They still go to restaurant. Please think about your future, learn the lessons, such as lesson that you can learn here today in our country will change much faster. And the demand for changes is quite obvious. Thank you, Alexander Ivanovich. You know, it's kind of teaching, it's a tutorship. So we pass experience, just like we don't conceal, we share. Colleagues, it's 5:30. Thank you very much. Thank you, departments of hotel and restaurant business, and all participants of today's process. All the best. More good guests.